good about the histogram? Why do I harp on about the histogram all the time? Well, it's quite simple. Most photographers, particularly young or new and inexperienced photographers, don't quite understand colour yet, and probably exposure as well. And what the histogram does is it gives you a mathematic, unwavering, exact visual representation of what's actually in your picture, as opposed to viewing it on a screen that might be uncalibrated, and you guessing whether exposures are right, whether colours are right. And if you ignore the histogram and wang things around and hope and pray that things look good in the end mix, then your photographs are always going to look a bit crap. So first thing you need to do as a photographer when you get to the edit stage is begin to understand your histogram. And the histogram is this thing up here in the top right hand corner. And it's quite a simple thing to understand, really. It's not, there's no wizardry going on here. There's no crazy maths or anything. It's not trying to trick you. It's just telling you what's going on in your picture visually. So I'll give it you in layman's terms because sometimes it can be a little bit convoluted and hard to remember. But pretty simply, if you think of it as left to right, left-hand side is shadow detail, middle is midtones, and off to the right is your highlights. Simple as that. Shadows, midtones, highlights. So on this graph represented here on the picture of Liv that I'm using here, so you can see the shadow detail here. Now on this one of Liv, the shadow detail here will be the shadow, quite obviously, and the black basket that she's got on, possibly a little bit of her legs and her hair. The midtones will be some of her skin tone, some of the light grey, and the highlights will be pretty much the background and a little bit of a nose and eyes. Now you can see it's telling us here we've got quite a lot of information over to the left. Now, when you've got one light, I would expect that if you have one light, front light or side light, top light or back light, you'll always get more shadow than you will highlight, just the way it records it and how it displays it to you. You'll see some histograms that have got perfectly a little curve like that, a lovely little arc, looks like a little mountain. That's nice when you're out on an photographing the trees and the sun's out and everything's nice and bright. You've got equal light from all sides. You'll get that kind of histogram. But if you're doing creative photography, you won't get that. So all you need to do is understand what your shadows, midtones and highlights are doing and the colour within those, importantly. So on this picture here, it's telling me I've got some shadow here, a little bit of midtone and some highlights here, which will be, you can see where the highlights are on Liv's face. But it's also selling really for a perfect exposure that I got a load to play with on the highlights, not so much on the shadows, and a little bit in the midtones if I want. But that is not what I want. I want a creative photograph which pretty much ignores all those rules, because so long as we're not underexposed, we've got detail in our shadow, and so long as we're not overexposed, we've got detail in our highlights. I don't really care what the histogram looks like. But having said that, it can tell me all manner of things that are wrong. And an example of that would be that anything that you see on the right-hand side, not to the left, on the left-hand side here, that's all image detail. So clothes, the hair, face, makeup, all that's in there. Anything that's a peak off to the right, anything that's above the level of the average data here, you see that average about halfway up, anything to the right-hand side that's peaking is a colour that's not there. And quite often you see this when somebody's working on a white background like I am here, and there's been no thought, or there's been a mistake in terms of colour balance. Or in my case, Canon cameras, if you set them to daylight and your lights are set to daylight, they never match. They're always a bit off. That's what's happened here. But usually it's because there's been no white balance consideration. They've shot an auto, and auto picks up a different colour space every time you take a shot. And people just then edit that. Their mind's telling them that's a white background, when you and me can tell actually when you look at it, it's not. So that's what this peak here is telling us. This extra green and red that's in there, green and magenta, shouldn't be there. It should be a clean white background, which should just be a grey peak here. So straight away I know that the colour balance is off because of that. I don't worry about anything that's to the left of the peaks is just image detail. But anything that's up and off to the right here, you would have to fix Otherwise, people will know that your white background is kind of orange, and particularly if you make a print from this without doing anything else, you will have a wholly orange background. And amateur photographers, new photographers, even some experienced photographers, trust me, don't ever recognise that. They don't see it. They're trusting their screen. Their screen might be calibrated slightly different, so it might not show on the screen. But in fact, there's a big error there. So it's important that you're using the histogram in all your work, just to ensure, not that you're getting that perfect exposure like some people might show you, that lovely little archy curve there. That's boring photography. But more importantly, understanding that if you've got way too much shadow, for example, if you're underexposed and your shadows look like that, yeah, then you know you've naffed up a little bit. Conversely, if you go over here and all the data's over the right hand side, you know you're overexposed. And learning to look for that in your histogram as well as viewing the picture will start to give you a better understanding of where your pictures are in terms of quality of exposure. And there's videos alongside this one which will explain how to go through and fix all these things. But while we're here and got this open, I'll just show you white balancer shot. I'm going to use a colour picker to pick the white background, because I know this is my studio, I know the wall's white. So if I pick a white like that, you can see on the histogram how that's nearly all almost gone now. Yeah? Got a little bit more there. Yeah? Picking various different parts of white. So even though the background is white, there's still often mysterious colours in. You can see all that. Yeah? Green. Yeah? So human eyes are more often than not pretty white. And often I find the correct course or the best colour balance is simply in the eyes. And you can see we've got a little thin roll of green there. So if we go into the tint and just go into the tint and take the green away, we're almost perfect. And you'll see on the rest of the videos, when you convert this into a JPEG or a TIFF, you might lose some more information in the conversion, and then I will talk you through a process of how to fix it at that stage if you like. So remember, look at what the histogram's telling you. Yeah? Shadow warning, highlight warning, looking for detail in shadow and highlight, understanding what the left, centre and right do, remembering that, so when you come to edit, you're not making rudimentary mistakes like overexposing, underexposing, or making things too mid-toned. So they go pasty, wagging sliders around hoping for the best. Yeah, there's none of that. So that's it for the importance of the histogram. Have fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like, share and subscribe. And if you hit the bell, you'll be notified of every time I bring another tutorial or podcast. Cheers.